With regard to Russia and to China, quite different. I mean, the Russian involvement in this region is deeply relevant to us in Israel because we effectively have a border with Russia now, because Russia is the key player in Syria. The Russians, of course, are selling weapons also to the Saudis and to the Egyptians, so they're here. But at the end of the day, Russia actually is, in a way, is a secondary global actor, which is trying hard to act like a primary global actor, but it doesn't actually have the economic muscle behind that to really sustain it. So this is with regard to Russia. We have to tread carefully, but the return of Russia to the Middle East and to the Mediterranean, important as it is, does not profoundly and utterly alter the architecture of the region. It's important, but it's not cardinal, I would say. China, by contrast, is a longer term, I won't say threat, but is a longer term challenge to understand exactly what the Chinese want and to act accordingly. My own view, at least, is that Israel has been somewhat complacent in recent years in that regard, thinking only of the economic opportunity represented by Chinese interest and not of the potential strategic challenge and threat further down the line. That, I think, is now changing, largely as a result of American pressure on Israel. Actually, the Americans have simply said, guys, you have to make a decision here. You can't carry on. So you can't carry on to not take into account the strategic importance of Chinese entry into the infrastructure. I'm told by those dealing closely with this that there will probably be no further major Chinese infrastructural projects in Israel of the type such as the Shanghai International Port Group's port in Haifa. There's not going to be a repeat of this because Israel is becoming increasingly aware of the style in which China begins with commerce, begins with creating facilities for economic purposes, but that is likely later on to take on geopolitical importance. There's an interesting historical parallel, actually, which I think is maybe of relevance to Indian partners in particular, which is that this, of course, is exactly the way that the European colonialists found their way into the Indian subcontinent. First of all, as you know well, better than I, was the British East India Company and French East India Company and the Dutch East India Company who first of all made their way in for commercial exploitation of India's resources, and then the flag, the state followed, geopolitics followed commerce. And I think China is doing something very similar in the Middle East and elsewhere. The Middle East is, of course, an essential pathway between South China and the Mediterranean. That's to say, it's on the Belt and Road map, and the Chinese are beginning to try to develop that. My own view, bottom line, is that China in the longer term is likely to begin to align more closely with US enemies in the region, and that as a result of that, if there's going to be a US-China Cold War, it will also eventually likely to find its way into our region also, with, of course, ourselves, the Saudis and others aligned with the United States, and perhaps US adversaries seeking to Iran, Syria, and so on, seeking to draw closer to Beijing. So that's the long-term prospect, I think. I think Israel is increasingly aware of that long-term prospect and is therefore acting accordingly to prevent, the deepening of Chinese involvement or even control of, significant aspects of the infrastructure of our country.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.